You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gems in Comms series special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels. I am your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm super excited because I have with me the very talented Karen Tippett, who is founder of Tippett PR, where she specializes in travel, beauty, lifestyle, or digital PR. And now she's here to share with us her journey in PR and comms. So thank you for joining me today, Karen.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. Now, I always start off by saying the podcast, essentially, I created this series special to give people like yourself their flowers. So well done to you and kudos to you for carving out a piece of the pie for yourself in this industry that we know is quite overwhelmingly white, and you create a great career for yourself. So well done to you.
That's very kind. Thank you.
No, it's absolutely facts. So thank you so much for joining me. So, of course, starting off, I always like to ask you, can you tell us about yourself, what it is that you do, and have you always wanted to work in communications and PR?
The tell us about yourself question. Literally, it's the question that used to give me hives when I was in-house. We were on team building. But I'm in comms. I'm an independent comms professional now. I went freelance in 2010. So can we quickly do the maths? 14 years ago.
Yeah.
But I started my career in Paris, actually, in an agency in the 90s. I am that age. The window is open. So basically agency in-house. And what I've done for the last 14 years is really had clients where I kind of draw on the experience that I've had in the other jobs. Started in travel. That was definitely what I did first. And then kind of segued into beauty. And I have to say it was all by accident. And then I guess in latter years by design. But I didn't always want to be in comms because I'm not really sure when I was coming up. I mean, I graduated from uni in 1992. I don't know if it was a thing.
Okay.
You know, and obviously the landscape we work in now is irrecognizable. And that I love. It's kind of nice to like have been there. I mean, not from the beginning. Although sometimes it feels like it because comms is quite intense, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no, actually what happened was I went to uni to do French and Japanese. And when I graduated in that kind of what shall I do now, I literally just wanted to use the languages. So I got one of those summer jobs in the Grand Canyon. I can't, it's called Bunac. I don't even know if it still exists, but you could get like a summer job somewhere in America, like on a camp and the helicopter company there needed narration in French and Japanese for tourists going up. So I was able to live in the trailer park and practice my languages. And then in the days of fax, I saw a fax come through from a PR agency in Paris.
Oh, wow.
Sending bookings through. They must have been like, there was a lot of hybrid agencies at that time. You would represent the client for sales, marketing, everything, really. And they were sending like reservations from French tourists. So I figured that maybe they would give me a job afterwards. So I sent my CV, which literally, I mean, for the confidence of youth. Like sometimes you're a little bit more bold, aren't you?
Yes.
Because what did I have on my CV? Well, I'd have had like a load of Pizza Hut and, jobs.
Yeah.
Fun jobs, actually. I loved Pizza Hut.
Free pizza, eh?
The uniform. The uniform of that era was like brown.
Okay.
It was actually really nice. Anyway, I digress. I sent my CV off basically, and Marina Dupuis, and she sounded like someone out of the Aristocats. She was like very glamorous. And she said, yeah, come in. So I left that job because you're only allowed, I don't know, to spend a certain amount of time there. And I literally took the map and found her office and she gave me a job.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started in Paris and that was all travel. We had a lot of tourist boards and car hires And then I came back to the UK in 95
Mhm.
and small travel PR agencies until I went in-house as
Okay.
head of PR at Virgin Holidays in 2006, 2007.
Yeah. That must be
So
really
yeah,
interesting, though. Very interesting trajectory. So obviously, like you said, you didn't really think about comms. You kind of came out, you done French and Japanese. Really interesting that is. And, you took on this great role, what that gave you chance to be a bit free as a, graduate. And then you kind
yeah,
of dabbled into it from there. That's really interesting. And the fact that you saw
yeah.
the facts come through, I love that you mentioned the facts because I'm like, that's so old school. When they used to send out the press releases via fax back in the day before email. So I love that. That's
Oh,
kind of
I've got a hilarious fact
going there.
story, and I've been known to share it every time when I've either officially or unofficially mentored over the years, and someone is
Yeah.
devastated by a gaffe, right? Or
Okay.
something they've done wrong. I tell them my fact story. And the fact story is that I had I was so proud of myself. I've been sent to my first event, and I don't know, it was some tourism US, felt very big and exciting.
Hmm.
And I'd managed to get my hands on some rates, I think, for a car hire, and it was a competitor, or so they were published. I hadn't stolen anything,
Yeah.
but I had been quite useful. I'd picked up the right information, and it was in a brochure. And the boss, she said to me, "Can you fax that to Florida, please?" And I opened the brochure in the middle with the staples and put the whole thing in the fax machine.
Oh.
Yes. Um, so I think that's just such a basic, obvious visual mistake that it usually kind of lightens the heart of
Yeah.
anyone who's called me and said, oh God, oh God. And I'm just like, hey, I put a brochure in a fax machine with staples. I also
Yeah.
spell checked a document about road shows and changed it to Roadhog and sent it to the US Embassy. We're
Oh.
good. We're all
Oh.
good. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah,
I was
exactly
hired
that.
again.
Exactly that. Exactly that. We are human. We're not, I always say we're human beings, not human doings. Okay. So occasionally we're going to make that
Exactly.
mistake. So no,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So what would you say attracted you to PR and comms in itself? Because obviously once you got in, you
Mm.
clearly stayed. So what was it that attracted you to it, the industry?
I think the storytelling, I think on a basic level, because I was in travel, I got to travel and
Travel, yeah.
that was great. But I loved the storytelling. And in a cliche way, the first time you see something in print that you might have had a hand in, I think is a probably a crossroads for any comms consultant. You either don't feel any kind of way about it, or you feel like stopping people in the street and asking if they've read it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
so
I just
true.
I really liked it. And to a certain extent, obviously, with its ups and downs, she said in her slow PR voice, I have liked the people, you
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
take that in context, I guess. But travel is pretty friendly
Mm.
because we do make it to the front page, and so we are incredibly skilled in crisis and reactive, and but we also spend a lot of time in peacetime where it's very feature led.
Yeah.
Um, so it doesn't have some of the edginess that I'm not sure a psychometric test would pass me for. You know, I'm not a news desk girly.
Yeah.
Now, arguably, that's an oxymoron. If you are in comms, you better be a news desk girly. But
Mm.
I think the frequency with which you have to be news desk is entirely dependent on the sector. So I
Yes.
think I loved that. I
Yeah.
loved the fact that when we were in crisis, it felt quite cohesive,
Hmm.
and you spend a lot of time outside of, you know, I'm touching wood now because we had a whole pandemic and we thought the ash cloud was bad.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I found beauty to be, relatively friendly. I hear about other sectors, but obviously I'm not familiar with them. Sometimes I'll go and play in other sectors because I'll
Yeah.
be collaborating, whether it's fashion or,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I just liked the creativity, which sounds a bit like duh, but you know, I don't come really from a background where you get to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that is both at the intersection, I think, of gender and generation and age. Not everything is about
Mm.
before anyone says that.
Mm.
Um, and, race. But I think from a working class point of view, those weren't the jobs that were mirrored to me. They weren't the jobs I expected to do. So I think I felt quite excited also by things that I wasn't aware of.
Mm.
So yeah,
I can understand that. I
I
can
was
understand that.
long-winded. See,
No, no,
told
no,
you.
that's fine. I think that I completely understand because the creativity of it is that, I get that. I mean, when you done your Japanese and French course, coming out of that, were you thinking of going to translation or something? Like, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with that degree? Like, did you, because you obviously didn't necessarily have comms on your peripheral because it wasn't necessarily in your kind of atmosphere until it became in your
Mhm.
atmosphere. So what did you want to do before that?
Again, this is where I find out that my intentions, I think, in going to uni were entirely driven by going. And
Okay.
therefore, I picked stuff that I was good at the time and interested in.
Interested in.
Because for me, the end game at that point, was to be the first in the family.
Yeah.
Um, it's all these things. Well, oh my goodness, once you get older, you look back and go, huh, that's why you did that, because
Yeah,
you've done the work.
it's really
Um,
interesting.
so I knew that I wanted to make sure that I was always safe
Mm,
financially, because that hadn't been necessarily my consistent experience.
yeah.
Um, and I wanted to get out there and see stuff.
Mm.
But, I can hear myself now to a mentor, be specific. And yet it turns out Karen was not specific.
Specific, yeah.
Um, I liked the idea of going to another city.
Mm.
Um, and I loved languages. I just felt away when I spoke something else. I
Yeah, it's
don't know.
nice. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great though. It's a great skill to have. It's really interesting. I'm just interested because of the way you started out. I thought that's really fascinating. Really
Yeah.
fascinating. All right, we'll move it forward slightly. So I always like to ask my guests about, their background. So one of the key questions I like to ask is when did you become aware of your ethnicity? Not to say you didn't know, the color of your skin, or I didn't know that I was a black girl. It's more of the case of where your outside world meets your inside world. So I share this on the podcast quite a lot. Me going off to secondary school as a first yearer and finding out about Chelsea Smilers and them wanting to kind of attack any black or brown person with a razor and cut the kind of so-called Chelsea smile across their face. That being quite a scary moment in my life where it was like, oh, okay, so I want to attack because of my color of my skin, and it's met my world in particular. Is there
Mm.
anything for you like that growing up?
It was early for me. And I mean, it's a theory, but I guess it's my theory, you know. Uh, I think that was a lot to do with the era.
Mm,
I'm a 70s baby.
okay.
And so it was bold and it was quite impenetrable and completely accepted. So definitely it was pointed out to me early, um, inside the home and
Mm,
outside the home. I'm obviously mixed race.
yeah.
Um, And yeah, so that ranged from curiosity that I guess you could call inappropriate, but hey, we all survived, to
Mm,
really not,
yeah.
and very aware of the presence of skinheads, very conscious about what routes to take to school. And that started early because I think maybe in the 70s kids did walk to school earlier. I don't know, but
Mm,
very real sense also of kids saying stuff at school. And not the first and last time I complained, but definitely something switched in me from a sort of sense of like innate, quite naive righteousness when I complained about it. And I
mm,
remember the general gist of the people in charge at school was that if I was going to be difficult, I wouldn't make friends. Like no attempt to address it. And I get that now. I
mm.
don't mean it's fine, but I think some of this is era specific, which is, we never were a monolith, but other reasons we're not a monolith, gender, age,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
working class, not working class.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, basically young.
Yeah.
Also, Um, my dad was a very larger than life character,
Mm.
the absolute dude. And that has had a lasting legacy on me because he grew up in foster care. Um, and every kind of institutional obstacle you can imagine for his era and
Yeah,
being in there. As you know, because we've spoken about it off
yeah,
mic, haven't we? He never knew who his parents were, and I picked up that mantle after he passed, and
yeah.
we had a bit of a breakthrough, didn't we? So that
We
was good.
did, which is really good. Which is
I
really,
am
really good.
talking to you as a fellow British Jamaican.
I know my Jamaican sister over here. Yes, we got
So,
to find out. No,
but
I know.
considering the man came in with nobody,
Yeah,
nobody walked into a room and reminded you that he was black, like my father. And
yeah,
I am so grateful. It's
yeah,
also shaped the way that I behave and the conversations that I do and don't join.
yeah,
Um, uh, I like to think he's raised his mixed race babies to come correct. So in a sense, I was both negatively and positively aware of race from a very young age, I guess.
yeah, yeah. That does answer it. It's interesting you say that in school there was no help,
Oh no.
no. As adults, even just looking at a child, you think empathy would be there, but unfortunately, just not for a lot of people. That's really sad. That's a really sad
It
situation.
was that era, and again, on the estate I grew up on, birthday parties. I remember one of the girls at school saying, I'd love to have you come to my birthday party, but my dad doesn't like
Mm,
the W word at the
yeah,
time. And I
yeah.
remember again how quickly you're conditioned if you don't have stuff outside of you, particularly if you're growing up in a household that isn't representing your heritage.
Mm.
Because I remember feeling like I had been invited because, of course, I couldn't go, but at least I knew, like, I would never accept an at least now, and I wouldn't
At least
accept it
now.
for
But as a
anybody.
child, yes, it's
Yeah,
that child, it's that, wanting to be belong, isn't it? It's your friend, you want to be belong.
yeah.
So I
And
can
I remember
understand that.
I did get to go to one of the birthday parties, but I wasn't allowed to be in the pictures. Like it was the 70s
Wow.
were a little bit
That's
wild. And by
wild.
the way,
Absolutely wild.
I say that respectfully. I am not suggesting that 2024 is suddenly there are
No, you're
echoes.
going to talk about your experience, and I think that's fine. It's your lived experience, but I think it's absolutely wild to think that you were not allowed to be in pictures. Like it's absolutely disgraceful behaviour from parents. Obviously, not necessarily not the kids' fault, but
Mm,
I've had this type of story on the podcast where it's at
yeah.
primary school age, and it's just so sad, really sad. But it's
I
important that we
think
talk about it so you can educate
yeah.
children. It's really
I
important.
think it's less these, I'm not going to say less these blatants, but we are individuals, right? We
Yeah,
deal with stuff as we deal with it. I think for me, it's more about the ceiling on expectations that are projected onto you. And I'd imagine that's a really common theme
yeah,
about what you are and aren't capable of, kind of.
yeah,
And that was definitely my school career.
yeah, yeah,
Just,
absolutely.
literally got boring in the end, but just that year on year surprise that I did well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you done this. This was you, Yeah, I get it. I get it. I get
You're
it.
so articulate.
Yes, yes. I've had that. Absolutely. It just drives you absolutely potty. So go looking back in your career, would you say that your race, ethnicity has ever held you back in your career at all?
Um, I mean, yes and no, I guess is the short answer. I think there's only a long answer. I think that definitely there have been projections about what I am and what I'm not, and that has been very varied. So is it about the rooms I don't know about that I
Mm,
wasn't in? I saw some rooms um that I felt I could contribute to. Um, So I would say it's more about when people have decided what you are. So
mhm.
I wouldn't say that it's a bit like nailing jelly to a wall racism in this country, isn't it? To a certain
Yes.
extent, except when it's dangerous and violent.
Yeah.
So, again, I just feel that we need to say that for context. Um, but I was never sort of yanked back like that. But definitely, I would say the euphemisms as to why something might not be for me.
Mm.
Or so yeah, I saw that, and
Yeah.
then obviously yeah, the backhanded compliments, just that,
Mm.
on a loop shock that you might know what you're talking about, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Um, and I also think by then my confidence had, I was scrappy. I don't want to say I was a hustler, but, you know, I'm going to thank my dad for this, but, I think I felt a bit Jimmy Cliff about things. I'm going to get mine.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
I,
I
I
love
didn't
that.
have the same, I don't think I had the same vim as him.
Okay.
Definitely how I saw myself and how I felt I had to present myself had been by that point heavily, heavily influenced. And I wouldn't have wanted anyone to have felt intimidated or
Mm.
disappointed. Or so I did carry that, but I fronted it out. But I think it affected I would say, were you held back as a result? I would say that in a roundabout way, it came back to me and me holding myself back. But it didn't
Mm.
start with me. So
Okay.
if you're now trying to point to the author of that, it would be problematic.
Mm. Mm.
I
Interesting.
think it definitely I had a different spirit and I definitely had more meerkat, for reading rooms.
Mm.
I also had, great opportunity, particularly in Paris. I have to say that first boss took me to things that as a junior I had no business being at, and I will be forever grateful.
That's
So what
great.
happened is when I came back to the UK, it was a bit of a rude awakening because
Right.
I had been both mentored and managed and told to, calm sometimes because I
Mm.
would go wild with my ideas, but never shamed,
Mm.
never sidestepped, never overlooked. So I think I came back with a bit more swag.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really interesting, isn't it?
yeah,
Came here and they were like, no, actually, like, hold on a minute, hold your horses
yeah.
too quickly. Yeah.
And definitely, I think uh, when you don't know what it is, or you do know what it is, but you're not making eye contact with it, it's very difficult, I think, to call it out. And
Yeah.
I say that as an individual. So, yeah, I'm not doing the plus and minus thing. The truth of the matter is, I've had people that have absolutely had my back in my career. There's no doubt about that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that it's like a slow puncture.
Mm.
There, it had an effect very early on my psyche. I wasn't as unapologetic as my father, which I could be sad about if I thought about it, you
Okay.
know. Um, so there was that effect. And then some of it was just flat out. The 90s were wild.
Okay.
Most things could be filed only joking.
Okay. Okay.
And a lot of I didn't mean you.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Interesting. Interesting. I think that's really interesting. And have you maybe experienced or witnessed race in the workplace? If so, how was it handled?
So yes. And it wasn't.
Mm. Okay.
And uh it wasn't. Uh
Was it a comment or was it like a microaggression? What type of
I
incident?
mean, most of it was microaggressions and they were completely normalized, so it's probably not. Um, but yeah, definitely some stuff, mainly, at events and things like that.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't handled because I just think in the 90s, the general vibe was that it didn't need to be handled.
Mm.
And if you decided that it did, you better at the intersection have some old money
Yeah.
because it's rent to pay.
Yeah.
So, are there notes for myself? Yeah.
Mm.
Um, that was just my experience.
Yeah, which is fine. It's your experience. I think that's really interesting. Really, really interesting. So, was there ever a time where you wished that you had spoken up about something, or when you did, or you wanted to self-advocate, or bring through your dad's vibe? As you said, be unapologetic completely.
I mean, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
There's absolutely no way that you could be not white in the 90s in PR and not wish that you'd spoken up, unless,
Okay.
of course, you did.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I didn't a lot of the time. I think I mean, from the self-advocate point of view, I think the first time I actually advocated for myself on that issue and others, just
Mm.
in general, was when I voted with my feet and went freelance. I
Okay.
would say that would be a very outward expression. in terms of advocacy for others, for some reason, when it's transferred, I get far more bold.
Mm.
So again, um, you know, in the integration navigation debate, I would say that I definitely waited until I had an influence on hiring practices in the little agencies I was in, and then acted accordingly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
and
understand that though, and I think that's an important thing to share
mm,
because, especially if you're saying like back in the 90s, like based on how it was, the kind of environment and what you're alluding to, clearly you're going to be moving with a lot more caution. So once you're in a position where you have a little bit of power, you might want to use a little bit of it, but also still conscious of the fact that this could be just swept from with it, swept from underneath you, essentially.
I always cashed in
That
all my
fear,
chips on hiring. Yeah, on
yeah,
hiring, I cashed in all my chips on. So I guess in that sense, the right thing to do, I like to have witnessed by doing it when I had a bit of clout. And you just can't do that when you're a junior.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but definitely, I would say as I kind of moved up, and I never really worked for the big guys, if that
Mhm,
makes sense.
mhm.
Um, I definitely made decisions that, you know, represented diversifying once I had a little bit of clout.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It
Because,
is.
you've got to pay your rent or you're not in the room.
Yeah.
But if you're in the room at any cost, so yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I haven't left a little bit of my soul in a lot of meeting rooms.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that because I think that's really important to try help to kind of paint the picture of like where we've come from and where we are now, you know. So I think it's really interesting. Moving forward into code switching. So, I had to ask this question. Do you feel like we can leave our authentic voices in the workplace or will we be forever code switching?
Um, I think it depends on the environment. And I don't say that to cop out. I am completely as authentic as I am today. What day is it? Today I am, Tuesday authentic. I I'd say that the switching that I would do now is, completely appropriate to the situation. But, did I have a voice, a special work voice that was definitely more, you know, what
Mm,
we would consider acceptable, whatever that is,
yeah,
considering I'm from, I'm working class.
yeah.
Um, I think it's about picking your environment. So we know now that that means that you got to pick really carefully.
Hmm.
Um, I've just been really lucky. I hate to say my clients rock, but they do.
No, that's
You know,
great though. Don't hate to
um,
say that. That's amazing. There's people who don't like who they're working with. This is great. Okay.
they're good peoples, and they are also curious, and they are mindful, and I'm curious and
Yeah,
mindful, and so you know, great relationships in that sense.
yeah,
I think there are still
nice.
environments where you absolutely have to code switch,
Yeah,
um, or we wouldn't be on this podcast.
yeah, yeah. I get it. I
Um,
get it.
But do you have to? Because we're talking about code switching on in the context of race. We're not talking
Yes.
about, the difference between your party barbecue voice and your conference call voice.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the fact that we're on this podcast, the short answer is there are situations in which you have to. So I guess the next debate is, do you have to though? And now we all arrive at the intersection of how much money have you got? How much support have you got? How many,
Mm,
what gender are you?
mm,
What sexuality are you? There's a whole host of, because the short answer is you don't have to, and the long answer is maybe sometimes it.
you
I
do.
live in the
Yeah.
grey area, Ebony.
I think it's an
I
interesting
used to
one.
be very binary, and now I live in the grey area. So I don't know if I have become more wise or more likely life has tamed me a little bit.
I think it's an interesting one. I do honestly think it's an interesting one because everyone who comes on here has a different view. You've got some who are like, yeah, we'll always be code switching. Others are like, no, I'm happy to be authentic. The ones that usually have to be authentic are now working for themselves. So I think that's interesting, So I completely get that. But I do feel like it's an interesting one. And I do honestly feel like to a degree, because of if you're operating in white majority populations, then I
Mm,
feel like there's a degree of code switching. Particularly, it depends, like you said, depends on the environment. When you're going into corporate sectors or things like that, there's a bit more pressure to sound and fitting. But again, like I said, we're now moving things forward that to the point where you shouldn't have to do that. And I do love when I hear people come on my podcast and they're like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just being myself, and this is how I've always spoken. I'm like, oh, that's great. But
I mean,
again,
listen, it's not about me at all, but as a peripheral of no consequence to anyone except myself, watching the way that young, particularly female Black women are moving through comms is very healing to me. Not just in their attitude and not just in the debate around code switching versus not, the talent,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So I obviously hate to center myself, but here we are. I have found it very healing.
yeah.
And I think that that is a grace, not a virtue. It hasn't made me think, oh my God, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Because also the talent I'm seeing through, I wouldn't have, couldn't have, would have. They are just so talented. But in general, it feels healing. It feels like, to a certain extent, what was is still, but people are handling it differently and they are supported in community around that.
Yeah. The
So
supporting community, I think, is big. The supporting community around that is growing, and I love that. I do love that. And I do love to see all the women coming through that are super talented, and their talents speak for themselves. And I think that's fascinating. Yeah,
I was on a judging panel for something, and every single submission, it wasn't like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. You know, when you know in that moment, you just would never have. I literally could never. And I just find that just
that's so sweet. That's a nice compliment. That is. That's a nice compliment.
Facts are facts. Nobody, I'm not going to shrivel away because somebody is exponentially better than me. Like, I'm very lucky in that place. I just feel like there's not enough people in the bleachers. When you see talent like that on the pitch, you could just sit and make sure they have what they need. Like, I feel very strongly about that.
And cheerlead for others, like what you're doing now. So I think that's something that doesn't always happen.
I'm a good cheerleader, actually. I like to sit in the bleachers.
Yeah.
This will be my first and last podcast because I gave you the runaround. And literally because I'd rather
be in the
stuff to say than actually do it myself.
You're a true PR person, because we are in the backgrounds usually, we're in the backgrounds working away. And that's it. It used to make me laugh when I used to go and go and do like media runs with directors I used to work with, and I'd be like, my mum would be watching it and be like, you was there, right? I was like, yeah, I was literally right there, standing right there. You'd never know, doing the things in the background, making sure they got what they needed. So yeah, interesting.
Phobia is a radio day where a client gets sick and somebody quite reasonably says, well, it's a couple of prereqs, can you do them? And I'm just like, have you got a week? We will be here all day. Not be fooled by my copy.
Do not be fooled. That's hilarious.
This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
All right, moving forward slightly to the ethnicity pay gap. So are you aware of it? I'm sure you are. And what are your thoughts on it? There's a PRCA report from the Race and Ethnicity Equity Board, and I know they've got a recent report at the moment, and they've done a pay gap report previously. So what are your thoughts? Obviously, we know it's an issue. I feel like it's good that, there are reports like this out here to highlight the issue. What about you?
I mean, obviously, I'm aware of it. I'm very grateful for the work that, Barbara and the others have done to kind of document it, because everything is a theory until it's not. You know what you know. On the one hand, there's a part of me that's very cynical about reports, not because they lack quality or substance, particularly not the work that's been done here. But I obviously, I've lived through the Scarman report. I've lived through the, report, and two things happen. People either deny the content or they don't do anything about it. So I'm going to park that because we're talking about comms and not the big world, Karen. I definitely keep going wide. That's the PR term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very macro at the moment. I don't know what that says about my stage in life. That's for another conversation. But I was reading Barbara's report. I've got the figures here: £41,000 over 5 years. That's how it. So it's a slow creep.
Yeah.
That has real life effects. That affects everything. Everything. So no, I'm not surprised. yes, I am very grateful for the work that's been done. And do I think it will change when mandatory reporting is implemented?
I think so too, actually. I think so too. Good
Yeah.
point. Good point. I agree with you on that one. And what are your thoughts on allyship? What does that really mean to you? Like, what's a great example of allyship for you?
Well, it's a verb for a start.
Start, yeah.
Um, I mean, it doesn't always involve this, but because of where we are, um, it usually involves cashing in some social or professional capital. And I don't see as much of that as I see visibility, but is anyone actually spending anything? Now, I love this. The short answer is, but the long answer is. The long answer is people really are. So I would say for me, allyship is not sliding into someone's DMs to say you're really sorry that happened. Not stopping them in the loo to say you thought it was wrong.
Mhm.
Say something.
At
If
the
you've
time.
understood that the risk to that person of advocating for themselves or someone else is exponentially more of a risk than it is to you, say something. And you know, you're not invited to the brunch. Everyone will survive. This is, it's far more serious for those on the receiving end. So I see it. I see it misunderstood, and sometimes that feels intentional.
Mm.
Certainly, I I think we've all had situations where we have said something, because having spent the whole podcast saying that I haven't, on occasions I have, and
Mm.
literally being a piece of tumbleweed. But
Mm.
that wasn't what it looked like in the huddle.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say follow through. So allyship for me is visible, it's vocal, it's definitely a doing thing, and it's consistent, you know. Follow through.
Yeah. I agree.
Um,
I agree
yeah.
with you on all those parts, actually. Thank you. Now, looking at your career, what do you say? What motivates and inspires you to keep going?
It's young talent. Like, to watch things that are so different. And, on occasion, when somebody sends me an email and says, so and so said that if I emailed you, you'd help.
Mm.
So even when they're doing something that I've had people like email me, and I'm just like, have you any idea like how innovative what you've just said is? So listen, I have nothing to contribute to your process there, but I know someone who can.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I'd say that keeps me going. Yeah, what's coming through, and the fact that you want to stick around and be of use, right? So, apart from the obvious, I love my disco garage. It does not
Hmm.
pay for itself. I would say just an opportunity. I don't mean to give back. I, at the risk of repeating myself again, the talent that I'm seeing coming through doesn't need any kind of straight line give back
Mm.
from somebody who started their career in the 90s, but they might need support. They might need more life things. They might need a hookup.
Yeah.
They might need, what do you think of this email? Is it okay? So
Mm.
for that level of talent, I'll be somebody's editor, PA, hooker upper, uh, cheerleader, whatever. So I'd
Yeah.
say that keeps me going. And the fact that, I'm very lucky. I think I've been very lucky in life, and I kind of like the way I live, and I like the way I work. My clients, like 10 years, 14 years, I know them as
Amazing.
people, like
Yeah.
strong female talented entrepreneurs. So
Mm.
they would keep me going.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Mm.
I love that. I love that. I think that's really nice. What would you say you found the most challenging on your journey thus far?
Confidence.
Okay.
I think I talk a good game, but I think it's far more generous to say that, confidence for me is inconsistent. And
Mm.
I think it always has been. So it's not absent, it's not crisis point, but definitely I would say it's not consistent. It's something that I really have to work at. So I would say that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Yeah, because ultimately all we have is ourselves. I
We
mean,
do.
I think we've discussed the wider challenges and how they affect us, and they also affect all of us in different ways. You
Yeah.
know, I'm visibly mixed race, that people project different things onto me.
Yeah.
I like it when they're disappointed because they
Good.
didn't know how I was
I like
raised.
that too. I like
But
that
in
too.
terms of personally, what have I found a challenge? I would say uh, being consistent in my confidence.
Your confidence. I get that. I can relate to that. I feel like you have those moments where you're like, working on it. But so I can understand that. I just think that's part of, being human as well and
I
feeling
think so.
emotions and the ups and downs. So I think that thank you for sharing that. I think that's really nice and very transparent. Now, obviously you are self-employed, so it's very different. But what makes a good work environment for you? To you, what does good like DEI look like?
I mean, it's layered, it's intersectional. Um, it's not group photos. Come on. Um, it's respect and it's just having people in the right rooms,
Yeah,
into these decision-making rooms and have a look around you
yeah.
and then have a listen around you. So obviously do a visual check. It will speed the process along.
Hmm.
Then start listening
Yeah.
and listen to, who have you got in the room at the intersection? I wish there was another word for that because it always makes me feel like, I don't know, like I'm about to leap into something where I perhaps don't have the depth. But I just go straight to the decision-making rooms. Has to be in the fabric. And there has to be welfare and support while you're embedding that. So it looks deep, it looks consistent, and it looks layered.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to move you into your proudest moments now. So,
Oh,
what would you say has been one of your proudest moments? Could be work or personal. And what has been a career highlight for you?
huh. Okay. Proudest moment professionally. Does it have to be a moment? Can it kind of be a long moment?
It can be a long moment. Whatever makes you
Yeah.
feel proud, share it. Share away. Fine.
Honestly, I'm going to go with longevity. You know, I started my career in 1993 and I've kept myself fed, clothed, watered, and housed during that time and have done just a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really grateful for the people that invited me into doing those things.
Mm.
And in a Snoop Dogg way, I'm kind of grateful for myself that occasionally, but not consistently, I would shove my way into a room. So, I mean, for me, I would say my proudest moment is that I've managed to hold a little business down. I've done no harm. I think I've done some good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm going to say longevity,
That's a nice
professional.
one. Yeah, that's a nice one. And I think of your profession in particular with the pandemic and everything you guys went through for the travel
Mm,
industry, and you're still here, you're still standing. So I
yeah,
think that's brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, that's a good answer. And what would
yeah.
you say has been a career? Is there a particular career highlight for you?
She's going to hate this. I literally woke up thinking about this morning. You know, when you're like, oh, I'm speaking to Ebony. So
Yeah.
she's going to hate it because if you've ever met this astonishing woman, you're going to know that she's literally going to pound on my door. She'll probably get on a flight in a minute to come down here. The highlight of my career is working with Linda Darbo for 25 years.
Oh, that's so nice.
She is, I don't think she'll ever really understand the impact that she's had on me professionally and personally. So, yeah, that is the
That's
absolute
brilliant.
highlight of my career.
That's so nice. And so, anyone who's listening, you can go back and check out my episode where I interviewed Linda Darbo. She's lovely. So, do go and check her out as well. Okay. So, that's such a nice thing to say. Oh, so nice. I'm sure she'll be super happy and be like, okay. That's so nice. Okay. So, what are your thoughts on how the industry is evolving now? What are your thoughts on how it will evolve in the next few years? Let's talk about AI, and
Mm.
how that's impacting us. So, what are your thoughts around the industry?
Um, I mean, it's here,
Mhm.
it's not going anywhere. I'm concerned about misinformation. And I think that will, is a very, very big piece of discussion and task for any comms professional.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it as a tool. I'd like to see it absolutely kind of gently raise everyone's game, because things that are safe with AI free up this talent I'm talking about to do the stuff they do, like the way they think around something and the conversations and how they frame them. So I would like to see it as a tool. And I am concerned, mainly my biggest concern in and out of work is misinformation.
Okay.
And I do not have the answers.
No one's got the answers on that. But you seem like you're open with
the other evolution. Yeah, the other evolution I see, honestly, is just the talent and the way that, if anyone's going to save us from misinformation and myopic views and harmful and violent views that go viral, it's the talent I'm seeing coming through in comms that, are taking comms skills, beautiful, diligent upskilling, but they just naturally think in a way that is just like, yes, and creativity. So how do I think it's going to evolve? I hope we see more of the ideas that I'm seeing out in that space.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my snacks and watch. And if I'm called upon to either cheer or hook someone up, I'm down.
And then you're down for that. I think that's so sweet. That's nice. Now, what would you say are some key lessons that you've learned throughout your career? Maybe three key lessons.
No is a full sentence. I mean, for sure. Yeah. And I would advise anyone to learn that a lot earlier than I did. I can really struggle to say no in certain situations. I don't actually think, demeanor-wise, I present like someone who's timid. So I think, but no is a full sentence. I would also say the other thing that I've really learned, the only people that don't make mistakes are people that aren't doing anything.
Good point. I like that one.
And, failure is relative. It's often temporary, and it's usually really informative.
Yeah.
So I would say that. Is there anything else I want to say?
Those are good.
I'd say stay curious. It's a long game.
Yeah. Stay curious. I like that too. I think they were very, very good key lessons. Very good. I like those. I'm just like, yes, I agree. Absolutely. Curiosity is definitely important in this industry.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of advice would you consider giving young people of color considering entering the industry, or those from the global majority? Because even saying young people of color gets on my nerves, because I never liked the word colored, but obviously now most of us say people of color. But I'm like, we need to find something else for that. But for now, global majority.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, it is.
Make sure you put the poll up so we can all vote. A, glorious to show we're not a monolith. Yeah. And B, let's not, because we'll fall down a rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
What advice would I give? I would say report immediately to the Black Comms Network and to the BME PR pros.
Yeah.
I mean, we have generational change makers in our midst. Like, feel a bit emotional about it, and not in that I didn't have that when I was coming up. I mean, look at these women. So if you are entering comms and you are, however you identify, in the Black space, Black Comms Network, BME PR pros, Elizabeth and Kamika are just, they're once in a generation change makers for sure. And I am incredibly grateful to have seen this.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's great. I think that's good advice. Definitely.
And the resource they have, and the experience that those two entities have, and the community, and the advice, and I would report both to those and say I'm thinking of getting into comms.
Oh, I think that's really nice. I think that's nice. And to add to that, I'll add on to that in a second. Because actually my next question was going to be, where do you go for industry support? And you just mentioned Black Comms Network. So obviously that's one network you can look at. BME PR Pros, they have their mentoring scheme. You've got the PRCA have PRISM, which is Public Relations, Inclusion, Support and Mentoring as well. So That's open up to global majority, so you can go and apply for that, and that's actually free as well. And there are other entities out there, like people like us, also for Black and Brown
Yeah.
people. That's a great place for you to go as well. So there are lots of communities that are
Oh,
popping up.
I am that person. Feel free to give my email out. I am that person.
Yes, Karen
I
Tippett.
always say, and I've said it for years, if there's something that you're doing or wondering about and it looks like I could be of use, the answer is yes. So just
Yes,
email me. That's fine.
yes. I love that. I love that. So there you go. So I don't even need her to answer the question because she's already flagged BCN and a few others. So perfect. All right, we're going to move you into mindset, which is my last section, but my favorite section because I'm definitely all about how we
You are. I
things.
love that about you. I
Yes,
absolutely love that
thank
about
you.
you.
I'm definitely that way inclined. So my question is, how do you deal with the internal mind war? How do you manage self-limiting beliefs?
Um, I've just got a bigger toolkit kit over the years. So some of it, I paid someone and did the work. So in actual fact, I understand my mindset better because I did, as we all do, privately, whatever it is we need to work through things or understand ourselves. Um, but I would say it depends what day and what tool. So obviously, you know that I love my disco garage.
Yes, I do.
Um, I love a good dance hall Peloton ride.
Love that. I need to come
Um,
and join you for one of these discos, this garage disco. I'm a garage
you've
girl,
got
so
to come
I'm
down.
down.
And I'm
Okay,
also now in the country, so there's also like sheep
perfect.
and
I
stuff
can bring
like
my
that.
popcorn. Okay,
I know.
my popcorn out
So
there.
yeah, physical exercise is one of my mindset pieces. Um, and I have like little tools that I mean, I'm going to share them, but I'm not going to be offended if someone says, well, that was no good. These work for me. I have a lot of chatter. Um, so I have for years, if you see me on East Croydon Station, it looks like I'm talking to myself, go on your way, I'm fine. I will say to myself, thank you so much for sharing. Now is not the time. And it just interrupts me. So that's like a granular thing that
Yeah,
I do. I have a draft folder on my email of things that people have said nice things. They've thanked
that's
me for my work.
nice.
They've congratulated me on a campaign well done. Um, and sometimes I'll pull that open. So, but yeah, if you ever see me going like this in public, I am saying to my chatter, thank you for sharing, but now is not the time.
I like that. I like that. I do. I do really like that. I think that's nice because I shut down my chatter, but maybe not as politely as you do. So I like that. That's like,
Listen, whatever gets you through the night.
yeah,
Um,
exactly that. Exactly that.
I also put on,
I'm more like, well, have a word with yourself, mate. Like seriously, I'm a bit more like that. Like you said, I love the idea of having a document that features great feedback. That has been suggested to me as well to do. I haven't done it yet, but I
I
think I
think
will
you
do it. I think it's a nice
forget.
idea because you do forget what people say sometimes,
I
and
think
then
you
it's
really
like
do.
it's really nice to have that.
I was on that shoot in Antigua and I started comparing certain things that we might have to do. And I was just like, well, with judges' houses, we did this. And I'm just like, you drove Mary J. Blige around on a buggy for a
Mm-hmm.
week. You had a chat with Maceo from De La Soul because you decided that what really needed to happen was a 25th anniversary. Like, and I'm just like, you've done some stuff. So guess
Wow,
what?
you've done some
Thank you for
amazing stuff.
sharing, but now is not the time.
Mhm.
So
I love that. Quite it down. But no, you have honestly did some amazing stuff. But didn't you do a silent disco on the beach as well at one of your resorts?
yeah,
Still fun.
basically, actually, I mean, semi-career highlight. Basically, 3 feet high and rising, if you're a Gen Xer, is a moment.
Hmm.
And obviously, De La Soul are Gen Xers too. And I knew it was the 25th anniversary. So I had this idea of putting Maceo on a beach where we could talk about like stuff and also have a silent disco that was curated by him. And so we did the thing. We called
Amazing.
it the Big Shush.
I love that. The big shush. Amazing.
Yeah.
I loved
And
it.
then yeah, we've done some judges' houses, which comes with its own kind of, I think that's how people think PR is, but you don't do that all the time. I like a good monthly report myself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So looking back over your journey, would you do it all over again?
I would. I think if I had known myself better, because I've suddenly realised it through this podcast, but I didn't really have any goals when I went to uni except the principle of going.
Mm.
So I think if I'd known myself better, I would have probably gone into a completely different career. If I look at, what I do personally and outside of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But that's a no regret space because I fell into something. And if I look at every chapter since then, I'm just really grateful.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would do anything again. I wish that I'd been bolder at times. I certainly wish that I had the swag of Stuart Tippett, but I got enough to have carved out a career. So, so the short answer is I would do it all over again because I look back at that young girl or that young woman and I don't think that any of the I could have been this, or I don't think that I was available for them. Not everything is environmental. So I'm kind of like, no, cool. This will do. This is good.
This is good. Well, you can look back and you've done some amazing things. So I think that's nice. I think that's nice. That is good. So, advice. What has been the best and worst advice you've been given?
The worst advice I've been given is to tone it down. I definitely wasted a lot of time trying to figure out how to not come across aggressive or too much. And it's a trope, not a truth.
Yeah, exactly that.
But definitely I want my time back on that.
Yeah.
Because yeah. So I'd say that was the worst advice I've been given. I'd say the best advice I've been given in the workplace is why not you? So we have this game of two halves, this tone it down. Oh, I felt so intimidated. There's no need to, a lot of this, I think a look in the 90s, if you were enthusiastic, but you didn't look a certain way, if it was a gesture, it would be this. And it's very disingenuous and it's very dishonest. On the other hand, in a game of two halves, someone said to me in my career, why not you? And that had as profound an effect, if not more. So I would say that was the worst and the best advice I've been given.
I like the why not you? I think
And somebody, the person that said that felt that that was the right answer at a time where I didn't.
Yeah.
So
it prompts you,
appreciate
doesn't
that.
it, to realize that actually, yeah, why not me? Like, I like
Yeah.
that. I like the why not you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice one. And that's something that listeners can take on, okay? If you have those moments when you think, should I be doing this? Just ask the question, why not? Why not me? I like that.
Why not you?
Yeah.
And for opportunity and for talent and for, so I would say that was a really amazing piece of advice. And I'm really grateful. I've worked for some good people, actually.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's a nice one. The why not you, that would stick with me too. I think that's really nice. And my last question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented along your journey, your career journey, to kind of help you?
For myself,
Yeah.
stay curious.
Yeah.
And as I've got older, and obviously I'm in midlife now, I stay aggressively curious because I think it has a bigger effect on how you go into the world, how you feel about yourself, what you can give to others. So I'd say stay curious, start being curious from the get-go and continue to be. Keep boundaries. And I'm going to need to, like, editor's note. I say keep boundaries because it took me a really long time to learn how to do that and establish them. So I get to sit here now and tell someone else what to do early. Keep boundaries. And for me, if I look back, disrespect never course corrects. Ever. Sometimes we come out a bit hot and that can course correct. Maybe someone didn't have enough sleep, or if you are being disrespected, it will never course correct. So that's a hard no from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That is a very key lesson there, actually. So thank you so much, Karen. That's been amazing. I love chatting with you. I could speak on and on and on. But no, thank you so much. Now, for our listeners and anyone watching, where can they connect with you? How can they find you if they want to connect with the lovely Karen?
I'm on Instagram at Tippett PR, TIPPETT PR. Actually, and all my details are on there. I'm on LinkedIn as Karen Tippett Lahan, double-barreled, married to an Irishman. But yeah, on my Instagram, all of my other click-throughs are on there anyway.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you again so much for coming and sharing your journey with us. It has been very insightful. Now, of course, I will be back with some more wonderful people from the world of comms. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, people, and bye for now.
Bye.